From North Carolina, he served his time at MIT for both his undergraduate and graduate degrees. He also served time at the INL for 32 years, mostly in the nuclear safety realm. I know a lot of you were here or there yesterday for Steve's talk on SMRs, which I thought was outstanding. A lot of really important issues were brought up. And he's going to continue that today. And from looking at the faces in the audience, I think we're going to have a rousing discussion afterwards. So, Steve Piet.
One of the things that there's a handout, and I don't know how many copies are out there, so I've got a few more up here. So I'll talk through a couple of things that I want to say as high points. Yesterday's talk, close to an hour and a half, talk and discussion, I uploaded, actually as we speak, it's still uploaded to YouTube. And on the back page is that address. So if you're not adequately satiated with the discussion today, you can get even more by going online. And it's you know, public, so you can even search the titles here. And I'm recording today, so any statements will get recorded for posterity. And it's because I think we need discussion and dialogue. What's going on these days, both in the electricity picture in general, which is what I'll start with, and the particular proposal to build a commercial power plant in the rest of our. This is big stuff. We just re-elected half the city council, and there was all this excitement about signs and how costly the signs are. I mean, we're going to talk about something serious. Okay? So on the front page here, kind of this thesis statement. About 3 decades ago, Idaho Falls generated close to half of its electricity by the 4 dams along the state. That's about the highest we ever got. Last year was 26%. In the last 3 decades, we've added 3 megawatts of capacity. It's our share of the wind farms east of town. Just less than 1% of all those windmills belong to the city of Idaho Falls. Meanwhile, the city's grown. Electrical usage has gone up. My house has gone down, but overall, it's certainly gone up. If this proposal goes forward, as currently the city has committed its share, we go from 26% back up to around 34, 35%. And there's talk about adding another 5 megawatts. That would get us back to 40%. But why do I care? Why should you care? It's because we're in a period of, I think, unprecedented change and turmoil in electricity. There's over a dozen coal plants that are going to be closing in the next decade. You can like that, you can dislike it. We don't control it. Now, Idaho is not an energy tycoon. But Wyoming is, Montana is, Utah is, Washington, Oregon, they all are. We are at their mercy. And the more we have to buy our electricity, the more we're at the mercy of the neighboring country or neighboring states, neighboring companies. We just don't control our destiny. The more that we have to buy. In particular, we buy 30 or 60% of our electricity from the Bonneville Power Administration. That contract is up in 2028. The BPA is not adding more generating capacity, and there's more people who want it. So we're facing more competition in the future, while we, so far, have been generating less and less of a percent of our electricity. So what's on the bottom of the first page here? 3 pie charts. The one that's in blue is where does the city get its electricity in terms of what it owns, long-term contracts, which is BPA, and short-term contracts, which are expensive. This is going to have to fill in as the amount of generation goes up and down, the amount of demand goes up and down. They have to, city works pretty hard to make all this happen. Then the second pie chart is by type of generating capacity. And last year, 87% of the electricity we used in the city came from hydropowers, both ours and contracts. The second highest, I was surprised, 7% of our electricity is nuclear power plant. It's not what we own, it's not anything lower, it's Washington State. And then the rest is a little bit of wind, a little bit of coal, a little bit of natural gas. And then you put those two together, you get the pie chart at the bottom. This is a simplified version of what the city utility has to make happen in order for we to have electricity in the city. Any utility has this type of challenge. So you can see here's the quarter of the story coming from the city's own hydro plants, the 60% that's coming from BPA, and now it comes a little other pieces. You see, what is it? Gold colored in there, little tiny slice. That's the city. One of the gold slices is the city's share of the wind farms east of town. Very small. It's 3 megawatts, and on average, it's 35% capacity factor, so it's a megawatt year. A little bit more, you're the best actually, 1% of the electricity in the city comes from our share of those roughly range. So that's where we are. Meanwhile, in the west, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, the amount of coal generation is going down. There's always proposals to take out some of the hydroelectric dams. Wind, of course, is going up. Solar is going up slightly. So there's a lot of change, and you don't drive it. You don't even influence it. We're along for the ride. We got to deal with that, one way, shape, or form. Whether it's a power plant, it's some natural resource, somehow we got to have the lights on. So the proposal. It's not a DOE plant, it's not a DOE project. The owner would be something called UAMPS, which is Utah Municipal Power Systems. It's a consortium. It's 47 members in 6 states, one of which is the city of Idaho Falls. The vendor, people who would sell us this power plant, is a company in Oregon called NuScale. And the regulator is not DOE, it's the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. As a safety engineer, I will tell you, NRC is loads more complicated than DOE. I'm not even sorry to say that. That's just, it's not a high bar. No, it's not. It is not a high bar. The Navy has basically 100 power plants on its ships. NRC regulates, current numbers close to 100. And then DOE has a couple of little things. So the people who really know nuclear power in the United States, the Navy and the NRC, not DOE. DOE are researchers. So if you want something to run day in and day out, you go to the Navy, you go to the NRC, you go to the commercial utilities. That's what we're talking about here. So this is not another DOE project. It would be different than the current types of nuclear power plants because this would be modular. So up here, a little picture, and you can see this better on the video that I'm uploading now. Or later on, you can go to the NuScale websites and read as much as you want. It's a compact design. So fuel rods are half the length of fuel rods in current power plants. So it's more compact this way. They brought in the pressure batteries, which should save cost. And there were 12 of these modules in basically a huge swimming pool. So it's the same technology, but put together in a different way. They tested all kinds of different components. Some of the testing has been in the US, they've also done tests of different things at facilities in Canada, Italy, France, Germany. So they've done their homework, and that's gone through 3 of the 4 steps of getting design certification. The NRC's rules now, there's 2 parts. One is design certification, the other is site certification. Well, this is going to be on the western edge of the INL site. That sucker's certified, studied, nothing really new there. So as the design certification comes in, we hope roughly a year from now, we've got the site, then looking at the timeline. So September 2020, NRC should certify the design. Then a combined license application goes into the NRC for 2021. 2 years later, in theory, that comes out. That gives the owner permission to construct and operate. That's what it means by combined. It used to be that you do all this, get all kinds of permission to construct, and then you'd have to go do it again to turn the dang thing on. And that wastes a huge amount of time, money, and effort. In some plants, like the Shore plant in Long Island, dang thing built, they loaded fuel, the governor of New York managed to kill the project. $5 billion in Detroit.
There must be something there that verifies that you actually built what you.
Yes, there's a variety of steps along the way. But it's not open to all kinds of brand new issues.
It's just, did you build what you designed?
Did you do what you said you were going to do? And there's inspectors and all kinds of stuff, and zillions of details. NRC has inspectors that go all over the country looking at plants that they regulate. So late 2023, if indeed all this works right, provide license comes back from the NRC, then there's a final go and go. City of Idaho Falls, as well as other partners up and down the I-15 corridor, because that's where the UAMPS municipal entities are. Yes, no. Have they sold enough of the electricity to make economic storage proceed to construct? So the money's on the line then. Right now, it's just peanuts. That's when the money's on the line. It'll be factory constructed in large part, other than the swimming pool has to be done on site. Then we turn it on in late 2026. First module in 2026. The rest of them in theory in 2027. That's the proposal in a nutshell. It'll help. I gave some of the numbers up front. It will help meet the needs of the city as well as the other members of UAMPS and whoever else buys into the project. And the timing is important. If it works right, a year or 2 before the PPA contract renewal, we've got this, we hope, in our back pockets. That puts us in a slightly better negotiating position, and we have to buy less power from PPA. If this project fails, I don't know of a plan B. Other than hope, which is not one hell of a convincing strategy. Yes, it'll help business. It'll, I think, make the INL a stronger place. It's not an INL project, but if you look at the map of the current nuclear power plants around the country, we here, the nuclear lab, are about as far from an operating commercial nuclear power plant as you can get. And now we might have one next door. That'll help in training, engineering students at ISU, welding students at CEI and so forth. That will really raise, I think, the white and blue collar employment in the fall. Engineering, welding, crafts, all that sort of stuff. Because that's what, to build this thing, that's what you'll have to work on. There are risks. This would be 9% of the city's electricity portfolio. We'll have to see what it costs. There's a variety of things and all kinds of details. And they've got to sell more than 2/3 of their plant. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to build it if you can't sell the electricity. There's all kinds of legal issues that we'll have to be contended with, water rights. And if this doesn't go through, what's plan B? And I don't know if a plan B, other than hope, which doesn't very, give me any kind of presence. So there's more references here, there's details on various websites. Open it for discussion. Questions?
So they have only sold 1/3 of the power?
Yep. Yep. That includes one module will be used for at least a decade by DOE research. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with that. There is talk of another module's worth that DOE could buy the electricity from. There's projections sometime early 2030s that the site itself will basically need almost as much electricity as a city might have. And that, I was stunned. So that electricity is coming. So there, there's new projects out there, and power's got to come from somewhere.
I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late. Did you already talk about the dams and compare the amount of power we get from those to?
Yeah, and I hit that in more detail yesterday. You look at the 4 dams on the lower Snake, they represent, last year they generated about 1.5 times the electricity that this plant would generate. 4 key dams on the Columbia that the tribes want to take out. That's another 4 times this project's electricity. So putting together, somebody asked me yesterday, what's your crystal ball about whether those dams ever get taken out? And I said, I'm not touching that, because give me the equation, I'll solve the equation. That prediction, I'm not touching. But that's 5.5 times the size of this project. So it's that would really change the grid in the Pacific Northwest, if anything like that ever happened.
They solved the issue with being able to refuel the SMRs. I did some research on this a while back, and they didn't even know how to take the vessel head off. And actually,
Sounds like you know more than I do, so go.
No, I'm serious. I was just asking if you knew if they had actually solved that issue.
Well, in principle, I can see how it would be done, but I certainly don't know the details. We know how to open big vessels, but how well they have done mock-ups and so forth, I simply don't know. It's an interesting question.
Did I hear it right? This will only provide a fraction of the electricity needs of Idaho Falls?
About 9%. In terms of the fraction that we are currently, the city has signed some sort of contract, in terms of the amount of it we have agreed to purchase. Now, the city, our utility, other utilities, somebody's got to buy the rest of the electricity.
Why don't we buy the rest?
Well, go ask the guys who elected yesterday.
The other 93%, or,
If it were my choice, I would look into that, and I don't know all the contractual details, but it makes sense to do. With the proviso that if I were making the decisions for this utility as well as any other utility, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. There's too much uncertainty these days across the board. I don't like the fact that we're getting 60% of our electricity from EPA. That strikes me as unwise. Personal opinion.
there are the wind, the dams, the wind, some solar here and there.
Right.
So it wouldn't be 100%.
What we've got to remember is California has more voters and more electricity users, except during the fire season, than the rest of the West put together. It used to be that California was a massive vacuum cleaner on electricity from the rest of the West. That's changed. In the last 10 years, that has changed fundamentally. Now, sometimes, they're still a big vacuum cleaner, and other times, they put electricity out to the rest of the West. So we've got a big power swing back and forth, day in, day out, week season, so forth and so on.
That's
We're at their mercy,
contract.
and that personally makes me uncomfortable being in California's mercy. I'm just kind of funny about that.
So, a couple of questions, but let me start with, because we cannot harvest any of the, from spent fuel rods, any of the fuel to recycle. And we don't have a place to place those spent fuel rods except on site. What, you know, they're building up by the thousands and thousands, and even 15 years ago, prior to Yucca Mountain being shut down, the research showed that 15 years ago, those spent fuel rods that were stored on site, it would take 40 years to get all the spent fuel rods to Yucca Mountain. That's not counting those that we're continuing to build up during that period of getting the spent ones there. So why, I know we have a federal law that we cannot recycle. What's the possibility of that being changed? And then what do we do with all of these spent fuel rods?
There's a lot of questions in what you just said, and you asked me, there's a political part of your question.
Who knows?
I can't touch that.
Yeah.
I mean, you give me enough beer and maybe I will. But otherwise I won't. The technology. There are other countries that are recycling.
Yes.
Okay. The technology exists to do that. I and other people in the room have back when we were still working, or at least pretending to. We did a lot of good work. The technology exists to do a lot of good things. This plant is being designed from the start to store the on-site for as long as necessary all the used fuel rods that would be generated during a 60-year life. So that's being planned. As rods come out, 5 years it would still be in water, and then move to dry storage. Dry storage casks are damn near in Bonneville. They can stay there for I don't know how long.
For a half-life of a...
Are they going to stay there for thousands of years? I sure as hell hope not. But, of all the risks out there, that's just not even on my list. Would I like to see the federal government get its act together? Hell yes. My personal opinion is that Yucca Mountain is over-designed. They have let themselves be driven into such an excessively conservative design that it became too expensive and too slow in receiving waste.
And there's an earthquake fault underneath it.
Granted, if it were my choice, I would recycle the stuff and do something a little more sophisticated, but no one's asking. I don't know if I can answer your question any better than that. So the technology exists, there are options, there are people who have, and continue to look at different options. But we've got ourselves into a situation in this country where we can't take and implement long-term decisions on almost anything. And I don't know what we're going to do about that.
First, won't California's situation change when they close Diablo? I mean, they already
It'll get worse.
closed songs, yeah, so they're not going to be giving anybody power anytime soon, I don't think. But the other question is, I thought the small reactors had a longer refueling cycle, so that the smaller ones are 3 to 7, and the commercial ones now are 1 to 2.
The class of small modular reactors, there are would-be vendors literally all around the world. Russia, China, French, I'm sure somewhere in Scandinavia. The Argentines are trying to get in the market. The proposal that's on the table here is, best I can assess, ahead of the pack. And one of the reasons they're ahead of the pack is the parts of technology of pressurized water reactor that is really well established and has a really good operating record, such as the fuel rods, the fuel cycle, so they've just adopted that. So for this design, this proposal, it'd be no different. It's half the height. So it's a little easier to move in and shuffle things around. But it's same material, same fuel cycle. There are other proposals, and maybe we build those here either as test or commercial plants, some of which have the characteristic you mentioned, which the fuel cycle is such that it lasts longer and has a variety of things that are long-term possibilities, but they're less ready to build today. I really like liquid metal reactors. Now, going all the way back to my dissertation, molten salt and molten metal coolants are really superior in many ways, but we don't have the operating experience. So I hope they're built, but I wouldn't wait for them to build something that you could build on the time scale I indicated, add to it later. I mean, Greg, you worked out at what I would probably always think of as argon, and you know about sodium reactors as much as I think anyone in the room. Want to add anything about where the sodium?
Well, actually, I don't, because I'm working on cells when they react.
Yeah, but you were close by.
Eric here. But yeah, they have pretty good operating layer.
Yeah.
EBR2, for instance, a long time.
Yeah, EBR2 was running, rating fuel at a 90% plant factor.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we knew how to take the fuel apart and put it back together.
And higher burnup, burnups going up.
So, but to scale that up to a commercial operation, the French had variety problems, partly because they didn't use the design. So that's a possibility. But
Yeah, but this module is not any much bigger than what the EBR2 was producing.
That's true.
And power
what EBR2 power level was what?
was 62.5 megawatts of
Thermal.
thermal, and then 20 on the generator.
Yeah. So it's a third of the size of one of these modules in terms of power rating.
Well, what's the power? What's the 80? What is the power rating?
For each one of these modules, it's 60 megawatts electric.
So 60 megawatts electric? Yeah.
So that's a factor 3. That's a fairly straightforward engineering scale. But we don't have the infrastructure that we did 20, 30 years ago in terms of sodium equipment. That's a problem. We have the PWR infrastructure, although it's less than we used to.
Yeah, but it's a little simpler, really, when you think about pressures, when the pressure.
I completely agree. Partly as a old safety guy, anytime I can slow down how things can go wrong in an accident, I'm happy. And one of the ways to do that is get rid of pressure sources. Sodium operates at essentially atmospheric pressure versus, I forget how many atmospheres PWR operates. So it would be nice to get rid of that problem.
I think the environmental community is moving perhaps really rapidly towards realizing that nuclear is our only source of great amount of power that's consistent in the long term. But everybody's talking technology here, we're talking about risk. And I would like to ask the question simply, has anyone got an economist who has analyzed that what if the project fails, how it would affect our property tax dollars? Nobody's asked me how much risk I'm willing to take, and I am willing to take some. Do we have those numbers?
I'm not aware of them.
Don't you think we ought to get them if we want people to sell it?
Yep. Now, what they've tried to do, and I've heard slightly different stories from different people, the way the contract is written now, as I understand it, is if power, this is 2023, is the key decision time. If power can come in at 55 megawatt hour, $55 per megawatt hour, then we proceed. If it's a bit over that, then either we drop out or we renegotiate. Now that's the estimate of what a new natural gas power plant would cost. So that's where 55 came from. Now, there is a scenario where we proceed to construction and then things go bad. And I think the case is, then we're on the hook. We're part of the project, we've made a commitment. The power at that point ends up coming in at more expense, and there's an issue. And I don't know what that risk is, and that is something that has to be analyzed, and I don't know where that stands.
Natural gas is great, and everybody shifted to it, but the more it's used, the more the price is gonna go up. And we've got the expertise certainly in this town to do what we're talking about. And I really would like to see the dollars for some pretty sophisticated economics. I really appreciate it. Anybody at BYU, I don't know, go, they can do that kind of thing. What do we have to do to get that done?
Good question, I don't know. If anyone knows the answer to this question, let's figure out how we could catalyze. It's great if we discuss things. It's even better if individually and collectively, we can help move the discussion further along. Jim?
I assume that each one of these modules can operate independently of the
Yes.
other. And I also assume that each module will have fewer rods than commercial plants.
Only because each one's 60 versus 120.
Correct.
1,200.
Where I'm going with this, all the commercial plants use some radioactive zero. And eventually got forced down to a few sites of fuel.
Yes.
So, are you going to, if you have fewer rods, the odds of getting a leakage in any one module should be less than all of the rods that are combined in one.
Should be. I see where you're going.
So do you have the option that one module is releasing too much radioactive neon into the atmosphere? And all of it will have to release something.
Yep.
Then you may be able to operate some of the modules longer between
One of the reasons to do the module business, and that's been debated for 15, 20 years internationally. And until you have really years and decades of experience in operating a plant this way, we don't really know for sure what's going to happen, to be serious. Operating experience is gold.
I assume these rods are vertically,
Yeah,
generated.
the basic fuel cycle, interior, other than being half height, it's all the same. And that, of course, facilitates regulatory review, and you know where to buy stuff and so forth and so on. One of the motivations here is because you've got a modular plant, you can operate some at 50% power, some at 20%, some at 100%. So more so than a current type of generating plant, which is either on or off. Here, from the plant level perspective, you can tailor up and down. Not as up and down as a natural gas plant, but more flexible than nuclear power plants are today. That's important because historically, how do we match electricity generation to electricity demand? That has to be done on a minute by minute, hour by hour, day to day, weekly, season to season basis. Now, some of us went to Palisades Reservoir tour this year in Albuquerque. One of the things that I simply had not appreciated is that although they can turn their turbines on and off and help load follow, legally they can't. That dam's number one priority, and all the dams around it. Number one priority is prevent floods. Number two priority is to serve farmers, irrigation. And then any load following business and generating electricity, that's third or fourth priority. Okay, that's the rules they operate on. Most of the dams in the Pacific Northwest are along the same line, not all. The city's dams, they can do what they want within certain reasons. They've got different legal constraints. That means, as historically we match demand and generation by turning on and off fossil plants. As the amount of fossil energy component to our electricity drops, how the hell are we going to keep generation and demand matched. Well, legally, we can't do much in terms of hydro, and I underappreciated the magnitude of that problem. Well, wind blows when it blows, sun shines when it shines. You gotta have flexibility in the system to deal with this. I know there are people who think that we're going to build massive amounts of batteries, but that's science fiction. I'm sorry, it's just plain science fiction. There's not enough lithium. The cost would be ridiculous. The energy losses of taking things in and out of batteries on that scale would be immense. So we got to do something to match generation and demand. And so each part of the grid has to be twisted, turned, and tweaked enough that you increase marginally, you then can follow the load. How well we can do that, I don't know, but that is an issue. That's an issue in Germany, that's an issue in Denmark. All the countries that have gone further in wind and hydro, well, not so much hydro, but wind and solar, they have this problem and they're running into more and more trouble. So some of them will solve this problem to the extent that they can ahead of us, which is good. Let them be the first. So I don't know if I answered where you're going with it. And back to the environmental community is not monolithic. My sense is that there are some groups and individuals who would agree that nuclear has to be part of the mix, and there are others who are adamantly opposed.
I know they're opposed, but there is no alternative that anyone's going to at least propose and sounds reasonable.
Personally, I agree with you, but
A whole lot of people.
But it's you know, what's plan B? And in this country now, any new project of any type is dang near difficult. I hope we can make this work.
Chernobyl was a serious problem.
Yes.
TMI was not a serious problem, and yet it probably had more impact on nuclear policy in this country than Chernobyl did. But then for a while we thought that with Arriva coming back, we thought something might happen for the good, and then Fukushima happened, and that really killed everything. So where do you see the public reaction, which has so far been fairly muted, in terms of building an SMR here in Idaho Falls?
I don't think most of the city understands the challenge, and I'm quite sure that there's been very little discussion about this proposal.
I think some of it has been deliberate to keep it kind of under wraps until we are sufficiently far along. But at some point, it will have to come out in the open, especially when you start the construction.
It will come out, well, when it comes time, if not before, 2023 is really when really big dollars are on the line. Not just for us, but the other members of UAMPS and whoever else is trying to buy the power.
Who makes the decision for Idaho Falls? Is it something the city would vote on, or city council?
City council, to my knowledge. The city council and the mayor are the ones who made the commitment so far.
Has anybody come out talking about the economics of it? What would that do to taxes, to electricity rates? I mean, that's what the public is going to be concerned about, I think, along with safety.
And of course, a lot depends on what you think the real cost will be. If it's at $55 per megawatt hour, it should be very modest, in part because this is 9% of the overall portfolio.
Yeah.
What's going to be a bigger hit is when that EPA contract comes up in 2028. Whether this thing happens or not, this would not replace the 60% of EPA. People want BPA's hydroelectricity. Okay, and that contract renewal, man, that's a tough thing. And the less of that power we need to buy, personal opinion, the better off we are. But who knows what that cost is going to come in. That's going to have more impact on my electricity bill than this or that.
Well, it's all subsidized.
It has been.
Yeah, it has been.
But, you know, Idaho has 2 votes in the House of Representatives. Washington State's got a lot more, and California's got, what, 20, 54, so 26 times our power in the House. Ultimately, these things get into politics, and we don't have a whole lot of power, either electricity or political.
I'm just curious, what's the length of time of these contracts? How long was the BPA contract?
Good question, I don't know. Maybe somebody knows, but I don't know how long it'll be. And I don't know how flexible it is and whether it gets readjusted along the time, right? Good question.
You said something at the beginning that I have a fundamental problem with. You said the NRC is better or shit.
From a regulatory standpoint, I trust the NRC better to regulate.
They have been single-handedly responsible for crippling the nuclear industry in this country. And you think they're better because it's more expensive and safer? No way.
I don't like
No.
NRC's processes, and they've, it's been working for over 20 years to improve the process. But their technical competence,
How many of the NRC commissioners have a nuclear background?
see that?
There you go. But my point is, the reason the NRC has basically foisted so much regulation upon the industry, that's why the industry is dying right now. Because it's too expensive per megawatt to make a nuclear megawatt.
It is true, that has been driven, of course, by politics. And I fear.
So again, I ask, why do you think they're better than DOE? I've been victims of both nuclear safety cultures.
Because DOE is atrocious. I mean, I agree with everything you said about the NRC. I just think, personal opinion, DOE as a regulator is worse.
Okay.
But in terms of public confidence, in terms of which entity I think has more technical competence to make sure the public is protected, maybe at excessive cost, I put my dollars on the NRC versus DOE. A lot of top folks in DOE don't have any technical competence. We have dentists
True, both of them are equally crappy in my book.
I guess I can't really disagree with that. But the NRC staff, they've got a portfolio of 100 reactors.
That they're slowly killing off one by one. Because nobody can get rewired.
And they're running safely. That will be something.
Okay, but at what cost if they shut down, then they do us no good, regardless of how safe they are, right?
I agree. But,
So, yeah, sorry, just had to
yeah,
get
that's it. I mean, we're here to discuss this, and hopefully as individuals or in groups of individuals, we can help drive the questions, some of the analyses, and some of the discussions that we need to do in the city as well as in this part of the West. Back here.
Not knowing anything that I'm talking about, but from reading the article and listening to the discussion, if we accept that DOE and NRC are both equally crappy, then really the advantage we have with NRC is the fact that it's not under the settlement agreement with the state of Idaho, which would stop this from happening if it was under DOE.
This came up, the settlement agreement, I'm an engineer, not a lawyer. When I look at the settlement agreement, I look at how this project's been put together, the fact that it's a commercial plant, the used fuel will be generated here, not brought into Colorado or someplace. To me, it's a clear-cut story that the settlement agreement does not apply.
Okay, so it wouldn't matter.
But that's Steve Piet's opinion, which means zero. This sucker is going to go to court. I mean, I'll wager a large sum of money if someone takes this to court. What will the Idaho Attorney General's position be? Will they agree with the interveners, the antis? Or will they agree that, yes, settlement agreement doesn't apply? I don't know what the Attorney General's position will be, and whatever year that lawsuit takes off.
Yeah. We don't even know who the Attorney General will be.
Here's my point. It would not surprise me that, what are we doing, elect these characters last year, 2022, I guess they'll be up for re-election. This could end up being a campaign issue. Wouldn't surprise me.
Settlement agreement does not apply to the Navy. Yeah, speaking outside of the agreement.
The Navy was part of that agreement as well. We haven't signed that agreement.
The Navy had its own section.
Yeah, that's right. The Navy is explicitly included in sections of this.
No, the Navy has its own criteria and restrictions of what they have to meet. But it is, they are part of that.
They can bring in any responsibility they want.
I don't know.
I
never studied it.
That agreement laid out what the Navy can bring in, but it was predicated on the fact that some of it was going to get shipped out, because in reality it happened, so it's all being stored. But the admiral has been in contact with the government to discuss what those issues are and how much they can bring in and how quickly they have to ship it out.
Look, the people who are philosophically opposed to nuclear power will use every conceivable legal way to bring up this project. And settlement agreement's not just one for them to try. It'll be fine. Yes,
So the question was, INL is overseen by DOE.
Yes.
So, what we talked about this week in our key project. So even though it's going to be in a corner of the INL project, are you still saying that the DOE will not be involved in this thing, or will the DOE get a larger vote in this whole process?
How all the details are structured, I don't know. UAMPS, as I understand, UAMPS will be owner. They will have the license from the NRC. Now, who they get to run the thing, that would be guesswork at this point. DOE is a user. They're set up to be a user of one of the 12 modules, but not an owner of it. And they may buy power, just like the city of Idaho Falls. They buy power. So this is not a DOE.
So they don't have any regulatory say on the matter, is what you're saying?
As far as I know, no, they won't.
Oh, they're a landlord too.
They're landlord, but they've already had the NuScale and so forth, they've done due diligence with the NRC. And coming back to your story, your concerns. One of the ways that plants like the Shore plant in Long Island was killed was that the emergency planning zone had to extend out, I think in that case, 10 miles. And the governor of New York said, we're not playing. You can't approve the emergency evacuation plan if the city, county, and state of New York refuses to conduct exercises. And that position succeeded, Shoreham, and $5 million went in the charter. In this project, because of the improved safety characteristics, size, and so forth, the current position, and we'll see if the final license says this, the emergency planning zone for this plant would be its own site boundary. Public, there would be no public evacuation plan required. So that whole set of legal morass that has killed power plants. Now, whether that comes to fruition, but the technical case so far, the NRC has filed.
Steve, the Indian Point power plant was built, I'm sorry, the Indian Point power plant in New York was built miles from anywhere.
Yes.
And yet over time, the city crept up.
Yep.
And now it's surrounded by human settlement.
Yes.
So now they're trying to kill it by saying it's too close to the people. So now the question is, would something like this, even though it's 45 miles from here, and it's on the edge of the island property, who knows what happens 50 years from now, 45 years from now?
The land that will be under the project's control, it's a site boundary. People, it's not public land, it's not used, it's not public land. It'll be in some ways shaped leased to this entity. That's the emergency zone planning system. So even if people were to suddenly move back to Atomic City, and FICO were to triple or quadruple in size, as I understand it, things work according to plan, that will have big impact on the emergency planning zone.
Just briefly, what has California done to become a part-time exporter of power?
So mostly lots and lots and lots of wood.
If you drag across the Mojave Desert, I could paint, it's just miles and miles of solar panels.
Yep. Although their capacity factor's been a lot lower.
That, and they keep turning the power off to thousands.
Hey, come on, it's fun to make fun of California. They deserve it, but they built like a lot of roads. Killed a lot of roads too. Who's someone over here? Oh, you, so David comes over here.
Water rights, certainly a big issue.
Yep.
Any place in the west. How much water is required and how much of it is actual consumptive and how much can be returned into the system, be it agriculture or irrigation?
Any pressurized water reactor, including this one, the primary, the inner part is recirculated water. You fill it once, and other than small amounts of rejection. The key water usage is rejection of heat to the environment. And whether it's coal, natural gas, nuclear, here, you have to reject heat to the environment, it takes certain laws of thermodynamics. You can do that with one of two main ways. Since we don't have an ocean to serve as a heat sink. You use either evaporative cooling, or wet cooling time, or dry. They are considering both options. Dry is more expensive, although you use, I think it's close to 1/10 the amount of water. I don't have the numbers in my head. You can see some numbers toward the end of the video water, of course, as you said, is an issue for any very large facility anywhere in the West. Water rights have killed natural gas and coal power plants in Idaho before. So it's a threat to this project as well as any other.
One thing that I'm wondering is pumping and re-injection an option.
Well, if you're rejecting heat to the environment by evaporation, well, then it gets up in the atmosphere and that water has to be replaced.
Can you re-inject the hot water? I know nothing about that. If you can do that, you get a fair share of what you're using.
I think from a strict technical perspective, you could use as a heat sink, instead of the atmosphere, you could use heat sinks underground. I have no idea what the economics.
I suspect it takes state legislation to allow you to do that.
I can't speculate.
One more question.
I was thinking, did everybody realize that the Bonneville Power financial reserves for its power business have fallen to essentially zero, while its total debt is soared to 88% of its annual revenues? It's really, it's got little cash on hand.
Oh, this makes me feel really good.
Thanks, Steve, for doing that.